whilst you're thinking about your questions from the floor, I'm actually going to ask both panellists a question to begin. So, Tom, if I can turn to you first, and this is a question to both Tom and Amy, but I'll ask Tom to respond first. We know that many publishers don't have a dedicated communications resource and aren't in the luxurious position that Nature Publishing Group, Palgrave Macmillan and Elsevier are in. But from your experience, what one thing would you advise that any publisher could do, regardless of resource?
I think promote a culture that encourages the individuals who want to write to be able to write. If you think in terms of resources, if you think about some of the bloggers who are influential in social spheres, they don't have any resources either, right? They're just writing. They've got a perspective. Of course, they're by themselves. They feel they're empowered and they have permission to do that, and they can write freely. Some advantages or disadvantages to doing that. From a company perspective, every company has people that want to write, and they want to write about the value that we provide. They want to engage in these conversations. A great deal of them feel that they're not empowered to, or they're not allowed to, or they could say the wrong thing. You have to create a culture where those people are actually embraced, encouraged. Let them take risks. Let them write the wrong thing if that's what they end up doing. But it's all about being organic and creating an environment where the individuals can emerge.
Amy? I think if you've not got dedicated PR and communication support, then empowering the rest of your staff to be able to engage stakeholders is really, really important. So, for example, one of the surveys I talked about, we didn't have much resource at the time, so we simply asked each of our editors, every time you speak to an academic over the next 2 months, whether you're on campus or whether you're at a conference, if you're talking to them about their book, could you just ask these extra 3 questions on the future of humanities disciplines and then feed it back to us? And over the course of 2 months, we garnered about 300 responses, and actually they said that a lot of those initial 3 questions that they thought, well, I'll just tack it on to the end of the conversation and it will be over in a couple of minutes, led to really fruitful, ongoing conversations.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the floor? If not, I have plenty.
Phil Davis. Tom, if you want to get your staff to engage the public, do they also need training in dealing with conflict situations? Because you can imagine this is really touchy, and one empowered employee who gets a little away with himself or herself can really do a lot of damage.
Yeah, so we do have the ability to train people across Elsevier. We actually have a professional social media director, and I've done a couple of trainings myself. But it's not so much the training; it's the experience, and it's the taking baby steps. A lot of what I do, and Alicia's in the room; she gets involved in a lot of this too. Is we're also actively aware of the fact that our approach and the things that we say, all of our colleagues are watching. So I do tell colleagues all the time, like, look, if you see me tweet it, you can tweet it. It may not be a good idea to always tweet it the same way, depending on what kind of a conversation it is. So we have a good way of communicating internally that, who to follow and what the parameters are there. But and on the staff, we talk about that, like, is it helpful to have like one person kind of engaged in all these tough issues, or do you want to be more diverse? We have a couple publishers, that are just not in corporate at all, that get involved in some of these conversations, and that's a good thing. But I will say that we do talk to them. We have conversations about, where are their comfort zones. We have guidelines that go through this. Some are like, legal in nature, that this is your liability. But a lot of them are like social guidelines. Again, like, if you're in this kind of conversation, what do you think about? What do you do? When do you keep going, or when do you cut the conversation off? It's easier at Elsevier because we're kind of into all of this. But within organizations, if I kind of try to provide some advice, it is about baby steps on an individual level and on a company level. With social media, you can start small. You can start in pieces, and then as your confidence grows, you feel better taking on more complicated issues.
Question at the back there.
Michael May from STM. This is less of a question, I think, than an ad break. In answer to Phil's question, and to many people in the room who may be interested, we're running a media training course in New York in June, and you can find details of that in your packets. And we strongly recommend not just PR and media people to do this, but those who have contact with the outside world in general, because I think Phil's point is very well taken.
Michael beat me to the punch there. I was going to mention that later. It's actually more than about PR and media. It's actually about communications in the digital age. It's about engagement and about telling stories, and it really is aimed at and suitable for anybody who is communicating externally. So that could be marketing staff, it could be publishing staff. It's on the 25th of June in New York. Details are on the website. I know we've got another couple of questions which we do have time for.
Hi, Kelly O'Rear from Sage. Tom, how do you find is the best strategy for engaging authors to write on your Connect blog?
It works better for book authors to begin with, technically, because in a sense they're helping to sell their books. But with journal authors, then it's really about the individual, right? Like sometimes it depends. When we have like a big story coming up, so we'll ask the publishing team, like, hey, when you talk to the author, can you ask them to, if they could write like a different type of abstract, right? It's actually got to be understood and written for a lay audience. But it's personal. We don't. That's not systematic. It's that we've kind of worked through our publishing teams to get them to buy into the Elsevier Connect experience, so that they know when to ask the individual authors about writing these kinds of stories. But I mean, but I saw where it's easiest though is with the book authors.
Hi, excuse me, Al Cassio, Cambridge University Press.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a question about tone in general. I mean, when bloggers put together a site and they engage in social media, they take a long time to develop a certain tone. And when you put together so many different kinds of content marketing and articles, how do you manage sort of setting an overall tone?
Depends on context. I don't necessarily know if there's so with Elsevier Connect, we do have an editor. And her tone is that she wants it to be kind of like almost like a reporter based, but again, very conversational. I guess the tone when we look at these things is the filter is just please make sure it doesn't sound overly corporate. And at Elsevier, admittedly, that can be hard for us to do sometimes. But when we're just kind of writing these stories, we try to be conversational. If you're talking about, but then other than that, it's up to the individuals. I mean, like when we have people writing these stories on behalf of their own product initiative, or maybe it's like an ethics initiative, they draft the article, we'll edit to make sure it's a good story and it's written well, but we actually don't advise on tone. It's up to the individual. That's part about bringing the business and the individuals to life, like letting them be individualistic on your social channels. If you're talking about Twitter and things of that nature, that's individual too. Every once in a while, I'll think about like what's my tone or personality on Twitter, but I try not to dwell on it. Different publishers and different people just obviously have their own personality. That's got to come through. It's all about being genuine.
Okay. Well, with that, I'd like to thank both of our speakers. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Amy, for sharing your experiences. I hope this has piqued your curiosity and excitement that you too can encourage your colleagues to be engaging in this way and really having these conversations. To close, we have a short video to show you. Last year, STM ran a competition to encourage publishing staff from across member organisations to show how they and their companies are using technology to innovate in publishing. And the winning video was from, I'm going to mispronounce this, Springer Dordrecht. And I'm hoping that Stephen O'Reilly might still be here, hurrah, to come up and receive a big round of applause. So Stephen, we're going to play your video, but come on up so that everyone can give you a big round of applause. have it again on a loop all day. I think what I would say is, I think, we all have this enthusiasm and creativity. Thank you, Stephen. We all have this enthusiasm, creativity, passion and desire to communicate within our organisation, so I encourage you to seek those people out and let them help you tell the story about what you're doing. So with that, thank you again to my panellists, to Tom and to Amy, and I'm going to hand over to Jerry for his session on life cycle of data.